Good morning, I'm Stefan Lohrer. I'm the sales manager for Creative Art Materials out of North Carolina, and we're the importers of Caran D'Ache of Switzerland. Caran D'Ache is a brand of art materials made exclusively and entirely in Geneva, Switzerland. Every component of our products is made under one roof. We're going to talk about various types of products that we manufacture and some things that make them special and things that you can do with these products. So we've been around since 1915. We're a very environmentally friendly company. All the wood that we use in our pencils is California straight grain FSC cedar, which stands for Forest Stewardship Council. The barrels on the outside are laminated with a water-based varnish, which is biodegradable and non-toxic, or meets CE requirements for toxicity, which is the strictest in the world. It's the European standard for children's toys. Our products are non-allergesic. Our factory is 30% and growing solar powered. So a very, very environmentally friendly company. Even the shavings from the pencils are used to heat the factory. All of our pigments are German and Swiss pigments. Very high quality pigments. Our products, they're color pencils and various types of wax and oil pastels, cover between 1.75 to 6 times the amount of surface of competing brands because of the not only the quality of the pigments but the quantity of pigments, both in the amount of pigment in a pencil and the amount of different pigments. We use up to 3 times as many different pigments in our products. So many of our colors have mono pigments in them, so they blend nicer, batch consistency is better, and of course the colors are much more vibrant. So we're going to start off with one of our better selling products, which is the Neocolor 2, which looks like this if you look at the packaging. Neocolor 2 is a wax-based crayon, but it's a water-soluble synthetic wax. They are extremely vibrant, and you can take them and you can add water. And we have these, by the way, these travel brushes, and you basically fill them up by pulling up on the stem here. This is a brand new one, so it's a little bit, needs to be broken a little bit. There we go. Get it started. There we go. Okay, here we go. You can see colors are very, very soluble, and you can hear see where they hit a little water here. They just diffuse beautifully. They blend very nicely. You can put this on fabrics, particularly organic fibers like wool, silk, cotton, linen. Put it on with water. Put a piece of scrap cloth over it and iron it as hot as that fabric can stand it, and it will heat set it, make it permanent. So you can use it like as a fabric dye for fabric design, quilting, tapestries, t-shirts, and so forth. You can use these crayons on silk screen, draw directly onto the silk screen, some silk screen media or color releaser on there from various brands. Squeegee it down, and you'll be able to get about 3 nice prints on it. People use it for monoprinting. They draw on glass or metal or plexiglass. You spray down some watercolor paper with, you say you got a can of window cleaner or something like that, or a bottle of window cleaner. Empty it out, use it for water, when you have an empty one. Or a plant mister, and you spray down your watercolor paper and lay it just so that it's saturated but not dripping. You put it down on the metal surface or on a smooth surface that you've drawn on, and bray it out or rub it with your hand, and you should be able to lift off 3 nice prints. In fact, we recently did a project where people look in a mirror and they trace the outline of their face on the mirror. And then they put the paper down and they lift off a self-portrait. And then we wipe off the mirror, because it washes right off with a wet rag, and continue using the mirror with other mediums to continue your portrait. And it's great because a lot of people who don't do a lot of painting don't know the proportions of your face, that your bottom of your nose is the eyes are in the middle of the face, and then your nose, the bottom of the nose is about 3/4 way down, and then halfway between that is your mouth. And so it kind of gives people a feeling of proportion, exactly. And so it's a great learning aid, and it's a fun project for people to do. You can also use these dry. They work great dry. And you could also dip them in water to get a broader stroke and use them like that. So you can see how the texture is different from where it's wet to where it dries out. It's a very, very versatile product. In fact, people use them for all kinds of industrial purposes, like a lot of upholsterers use them on leather because for patterns, and then after they cut it, they just wipe it right off, wash it right off. People use them to keep score with darts on people use them for daily specials on restaurants on those glass signs.
Okay,
people
like
use them for all kinds of
dry
things.
erase, a wet erase.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can just wet erase them.
Yeah.
So that's the Neocolor 2. There's also a product called Neocolor 1, which is basically the same crayon but the water-resistant wax as opposed to a water-soluble wax. The Neocolor 1 is, because it's water-resistant wax, it's more light-fast than a water-soluble one. You can also dissolve it with mineral spirits or any kind of turpentine, turpenoid, things like that, and it reacts very much like an oil paint. It's a phenomenal encaustic, the Neocolor 1. You can use it as a resist, and it's wonderful for sgraffito. Sgraffito is when you put a light color down and then you completely cover the surface with a dark color and then scratch off the top layer. It's just like scratch art. And Neocolor 1 is probably one of the best mediums for that. Now we have different color pencils. We make quite a few different color pencils at Caran D'Ache. We have the first family of products, which would be the Super Color and Pablo. And I referred to them as a family of products because the cores are basically the same cores, they're just different waxes. These have water-soluble waxes, these have water-resistant waxes. Other than that, they're identical pencils in the same assortment of colors, and you can get them in sets of 12, 18, 30, 40, 80, and 120. One of the things that makes these pencils special, both of them, is that at Caran D'Ache, every single color of every pencil has its own recipe. And they're all fine-tuned with waxes because pigments have different hardnesses. Yellows tend to be very brittle, reds tend to be very mushy, and then you have everything in between, or very creamy, I should say. And so, by adjusting every single color, we adjust it with waxes to suit that particular pigment. We can get a uniform hardness very close to a 6B. We're the only brand that goes through that kind of trouble. And the reason we do that, even though it's very, very labor intensive, is so that an artist can go from one color to the next without feeling they have to adjust pressure. A lot of people, when they go to use a color pencil, like this Super Color pencil, they got to test it a little bit first to see how it's going to lay down. Right? And here, you can, if you get used to one color, you get used to all the colors because they all feel identical. And as you can see, the color saturation is phenomenal. And again, here you can use this on a fabric just like you could the Neocolor 2. You use a fabric, especially like I said, an organic fiber, put a piece of cloth over it, heat set it, and I say put a piece of cloth or scrap paper over it, and that's so you don't get your iron dirty, because we don't want you to get your iron full of pigment and then the next day you go to do your white silk shirt and you get a streak in it, which would be less than fortunate. Another thing we can do is we could take these watercolor pencils. We have these blenders, and obviously you can take these blenders and you could cross-hatch blue and yellow and make a green, or red and yellow make an orange, or red and blue make a purple, or so forth. But they also affect how the pigment looks on the paper. It really, you can make them, give it almost a painterly quality, because basically what you're doing is burnishing it here. Now, we can take a little water, and we can add it here, and you'll notice that it acts as a resist when you put it over a water-based color pencil, or water-soluble color pencil. Not water-based, water-soluble. So it works great as a resist, and also wherever you add this blender, this colorless blender, which basically comes packaged like this here, this is one that I opened up here, you're adding about 10% to the light fastness of that pencil because the waxes protect the pigments from light. Those are great. The Pablo, by the way, you can use these for underpaintings, you can use these together with a permanent pencil. It's always great to use water-soluble and water-resistant pencils together because they react differently. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to do a lion and I wanted to draw the mane, and I could so I could draw the hairs in the mane and the locks in its mane and the pattern of its fur with a Pablo pencil that's water resistant, which the box looks like that. And then I could go over it in the same hues or colors in the Supercolor and then hit it with a brush, and everything that is done with the Pablo underneath would remain unaffected, or you wouldn't lose the articulation of those lines. And the water-soluble color pencils, of course, would flow like a watercolor. So you have that movement of a watercolor, but the lines and the hard lines of a permanent pencil. So you can use them together that way. Or if you think of the bark of a tree, how a bark of a tree has a pattern, like particularly an oak tree. You could do that pattern in a Pablo and then go over it with the same shade of Supercolor, hit it with a brush, or veins of a leaf, or the texture of a carpet, or fabric,
right,
or anything like that. So that permanent water-soluble, you can use them together and it works wonderful. You could also use the watercolor underneath as an underpainting and then go over it with a permanent pencil. So you have those options. By the way, Pablo works great on other mediums like wood, stone, things like that. By the way, it's the Neocolor 1, the wax pastel that's not water-soluble, that does a great job on stone and pottery and things like that. You wouldn't fire it, of course, because it's a wax-based product.
Right.
But on already fired pottery, and you can burnish it, it comes out great.
Can any of these be used in pottery to be fired?
No.
No, okay. I do get
If
customers
it's a wax-based product, it would,
right, okay,
it would burn and smell, and
right,
it wouldn't work out good for you. Now, we have another family of products, which is the Luminance and Museum pencils. These are the permanent version, and the water-soluble version Museum is a water-soluble version. Luminance is the permanent version. These are 2 degrees softer on average. They're about an 8B hardness. The Luminance is the most archival pencil on the market today. It's about between 30 and 40% wax, depending again on pigment, because some pigments are harder that would require more wax. We don't use any kind of fillers in any of our products. Basically we try to make everything as concentrated as possible, because we always feel that you can dilute or dissolve it later, but you can't make it more concentrated later. So all of our products are extremely concentrated. Luminance is different from Supercolor and Pablo in that the waxes that are in these pencils, there's several types of waxes, 4 types of waxes in here, and they are ground and blended with the pigments right from the start. And what that does is, because it has a higher concentration of wax, because we want them to be extremely archival and these waxes protect the pigments, it prevents them from blooming, which none of our pencils bloom, by the way. Blooming is basically when the waxes come to the surface and they oxidize and form a patina.
gotcha.
It happens with a lot of different color pencils. None of our pencils bloom. We don't have that issue. Color, as you can see, is very, very rich. You can go 5-6 layers deep here without ever having to worry about a bloom. These are approved by the ASTM, which is the American Standard for Light Fastness, ASTM 6901. And by that, it means that they were exposed for 3 months of direct sunlight in the Arizona desert by an independent lab, and I think 400 hours under intense UV lights in an independent lab in the United States, indoors. So that's many generations of normal exposure. They're about as light fast as a high quality oil paint.
And all the colors are like that.
Well, there are
Variances.
76 colors, and 80% of them have an LF1 rating. 20 of them have an LF2 rating, which is still considered acceptable, and then it goes all the way up to LF5, but only LF1 and LF2 are acceptable by the ASTM, and these are the only pencils that are on the market that are ASTM approved for light fastness. Now, our watercolor pencils Museum are, here we go by a different standard of measurement as far as light fastness go. They are the blue wool, which is an accepted testing method of light fastness. They are, again, 76 colors, 69 of them have a 5-star light fastness rating, and the rest are less than 5 stars. But for a watercolor pencil, and watercolor pencils, watercolor mediums in general are never as light fast as permanent non-water soluble mediums, because basically what's going on is I put this on a piece of paper, the water soluble waxes dissolve and go inside the paper, and the waxes is what's protecting the pigments. But because of the high quality pigments that we're using here, we still have that light fastness. So water soluble medium, extremely light fast, which is, those two usually don't go hand in hand. Another thing about museum, beautiful dry or wet, it's very unique. They do not like to reactivate. Now, other color, our super color pencils and other watercolor pencils, they get dry, you can still lift them up to some extent, fairly easily. And while they're still wet, museum can still be lifted up off the paper, as you can see. But once they dry, they don't like to reactivate, which is not to say that you can't. You can with a stiff brush, and you have a good quality paper, you can certainly lift them. But you can stay enough so they adhere to the paper or they support enough so that you can do an overlay razor sharp without them bleeding into each other. So it opens up new possibilities for watercolorists. Museum, very, very versatile product. The color saturation is incredible, and they incorporate the Adolf Hölzel double primary system. And he was a guy who came up with this hot, cool, blue, red, and yellow blending system for, well, basically unlimited ability to blend colors together. So if you know how to blend colors, or you know how to use a color wheel, you'd be able to get beautiful results by using these museum pencils. I'm putting a museum pencil in a Luminance sleeve, which is not what I wanted to do. So, by the way, the Luminance pencils, the ones I mentioned earlier, the permanent ones, melt very easily. So you can use them on an Icarus board to do hot blending on the support, directly on the support. The Icarus board they're made by Esther and Mario Roy in California. What it is, it's a drawing board that has a heating element underneath it.
Okay.
And you can do hot blends.
So kind of a
right on the paper.
Shoot off of acoustics.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid of encaustics, and you can use our wax crayons, but the Luminance pencils, any pencil that has a high concentration of wax can do that. And Luminance are the brightest ones out of all of them, because we can use quite a bit of waxes, but we can get away with it and still have a very, very bright pencil because we don't have any kind of fillers in there. And we use the highest quality pigments and the most amount of different pigments. So the colors are very, very vibrant. We don't sacrifice any of that. So, and it's a beautiful pencil to work with. Another product that we're talking about here today briefly is the Fabralo family of products. And we have the Fabralo brush and the Fabralo felt tips. The felt tips are the old ones, the brush are the new ones. Both great products. These are a studio grade product. They are food dye based products, so it's not a pigment based product. So, and we do that because a lot of young people use markers. We want them to be non-toxic. They are water soluble, and which is great. You can use them kind of like a watercolor, which is good for two specific different reasons. One is you can draw, right? I have a penchant for purple, right? You can draw and you can hit it with a little water, and it dissolves nicely. So you do watercolor techniques for some reason, but what's more important is for parents is it washes out of clothes. It washes out of most fabrics. Now you have an expensive white silk shirt and you get a big smear of marker on it. Well, you know, you're going to have a stain. But on your basic cotton t-shirts and what we wear when we're doing crafts, things like that, it's going to wash out. Also, another thing that's really great about both of these products is young people can tend to be a little heavy-handed, and these hold their tip very well. Even the felt tips, which would normally be very vulnerable. You know, a lot of them kind of pill up on the end when you use a felt tip. They kind of almost look like a mushroom head after you use them for a while.
Yeah.
These hold their shape very well, and both storekeepers and parents love them for the fact that they have a very long shelf life. They don't dry out like other markers would. If a kid leaves a young person, I should say, leaves the cap off for 2-3 days, they're not going to dry out where you have to throw them away. Now, if you leave them out for a week or two, you're done.
Right. Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, you see it the next day if they haven't been real good about putting it away and you haven't lost your investment in these. And they last for a very, very long time. So, excellent marker.
Very good. Yeah.
And I think that's it for today.
Okay.
Oh, the travel brushes. We have these travel brushes. Now, let's make no mistake, these are not going to replace your Kolinsky brushes that you have in your studio. But if you want to do plein air painting and things like that, these are phenomenal. You put them in water, you lift up like I did earlier, right? And the first time you use them, you really want to get that gasket a little wet and get them primed up. So now you got them, you put the head on it, screw it back on, you get it primed, voila, and now it works like a brush, you know?
Can you put dye-based inks in there?
You can use fountain pen inks and things like that. Just once you put an ink in it, from then on, pretty much an ink brush, no longer a water brush.
Gotcha.
Now, but for using, you'll notice that, like I was using with this brush, right? And you'll notice here how the tip of the brush, the back of the brush here is white and the front is purple from the color I was using, right? And that is when you rinse these out, right? You're washing them from the inside out. So what's going on is basically that the inside of the brush, which is where usually the hardest part to wash, where you're in there doing this and whatever have you, that's the part that gets washed first because the water is coming from the inside. So you're washing it from the inside out.
Right.
The other thing is that there is a rubber gasket here. And that gasket is great because you can control the flow without having to do this. It's like fine-tuning the amount of water that's coming out of your brush. So it's very easy to have good control over it. It has a nice cap, which if I put it on, I need reading glasses, I don't always wear them. Put it in your shirt, you know, won't leak, mostly. No, they're really good, they don't leak. They're put them in your shirt,
Right.
Put a couple of watercolor pencils, particularly Museum, which Museum, by the way, is actually accepted as a watercolor as well. It's like two mediums in one.
Yeah.
It's accepted by watercolor societies as a watercolor, and it's accepted by the Color Pencil Society as a watercolor pencil. It's really, it fits in both categories because the cores in there are a real, true, genuine, high-quality watercolor. So together with the Museum brushes, a couple of these in your shirt pocket or in your bag, with a good assortment of Museum pencils or watercolor pencils or watercolor crayons, or even water paint if you happen to prefer gouache or watercolors. Take them out in the field and you have some pencils. You don't even have to carry a container of water. You just have these things loaded up with water and you're ready to go.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your time. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Bye.